Leadership Academy, India's top coaching institution for civil services preparation. Join us online to get most enriching experience from best faculty with excellent notes and specially designed courses. To join the batch, download Nandipayas Academy app from Google Play Store. For more information, contact 9511 280 465.
Hello everybody, welcome you all again. Let's continue with our most important sociological thinker, Karl Marx. We have already done with the conceptual understanding of one important topic. The first topic in our syllabus regarding Karl Marx is historical materialism. I hope you are conceptually good with now, about historical materialism. The idea of historical materialism and the basic ingredient concepts in the historical materialism we are going to need while we are discussing the mode of production now. Mode of production is again one of the technical concept, theory given by Karl Marx. But before we directly enter into mode of production, let's brush up our ideas first. Please tell me, what do you mean by factor of production? Factor of production is nothing but a tool, technique, skill, technology, technical know-how about how to produce. Simply, the factors of production or the FOP is nothing but the tools and techniques with which we produce. Marx termed factors of production as the extent of man's control over the nature. Control over the nature, extent of control over the nature. To what extent we can control the nature is dependent on the factors of production and their development. And throughout the history, the factors of production are changing with the evolution process. As the change with the change, the factors of production are also developing. They are becoming advanced and advanced, right? And the factors of production are at the core of the production process, which is the basic survival need of any society or the individual, like. And the production process also involves relations of production. That is quite natural. If we want to get ourselves involved in production process, we are naturally and automatically getting involved in relations of production. And that's how relations and the factors of production become the core of the production process which is the most important activity in the society, on which the society is dependent, its survival is dependent, its existence is dependent, and the production process, if it is it is a materialistic, you can say term, it is economic foundation, and that's how the society is also based on economic and material conditions, material foundations. And once this, situations change, situations in the sense, once the factors of production change, that is quite natural process. It leads to change in the relationships of production. And together, the change in the factors and relations leads to change in the economic infra, economic background, material infra. And once the foundation is changed, it leads to change in nothing but society. And the change in society for Marx is nothing but a change in the forms of stage and stages. And throughout the history, the society has changed in a phased manner or staged manner. And that each stage in the progression of society is called as Yes, of course, mode of production. That is the topic we are going to study now. Okay, so now just first introductory understanding we'll have about mode of production. Mode of production is that each stage in the society's evolution, society's progression, society's development from one stage to another. Then the natural question is, what leads to that change? Yes, of course, that change in the factors and change in the relations and all, right? But Marx, according to Marx, the motor of the history, what is the motor of the history? I'm writing that word here. Motor of history. According to Marx, the motor of history is contradictions. Or the contradiction, conflict of interests, some struggles, class struggles. Basically, in one word, the contradictions are, or the contradiction is the motor of the history. Because of contradictions, the society progresses from one stage to another. Are you getting me? Then, for sake of time, just answer me, what is the motor of history? It is the contradiction. Have you heard about the word dialectics? A dialectics is a process of dynamism. Dialectics. Okay, dialectics is a process of dynamism, a continuous change. For example, let's say there is something, idea or material thing that is called as a thesis. When new concept, new idea or new thing gets developed which is diametrically opposite to the thesis or the earlier thing, and the thing and its opposite gets intermingled, they react with each other and it gives rise to a new form that is called as synthesis. And with the time being, the synthesis is again gets converted into a thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Again, the synthesis gets converted into thesis and its antithesis and synthesis. And that's how the society goes on. By the way, the idea of dialectics I have explained in the YouTube sessions, that is the basic foundational concepts of dialectics. Please refer to that. We have discussed there about dialectics. But for time being, dialectics is nothing but a process which explains the change. Marx used the concept of dialectics and gave the idea of both historical materialism and mode of production. According to Marx, the history of the motor of the history is contradictions. And because of contradictions, the society changes from one stage to another. It changes its form and phase from one stage to another. And that model or that each stage is called as the mode of production. And according to Marx, there are a total 6 modes of production in the Marx's concept of mode of production. Okay, there are total 6 modes of production. So, what is a mode of production? The stage. And how many are there? 6 modes of production. According to Marx, the society evolved from its earlier phase, earlier stage. Now onwards, we will technically call each stage as mode of production, and we won't use the word stage or phase for technical sense. Now onwards, you will understand a mode of production by its meaning of a stage in the evolution of the society throughout the history. As we have discussed earlier in the historical materialism concept, what was historical materialism? It is nothing but a progression of society from one stage, that is one mode of production, gets changed to the another mode of production, and likewise to the next mode of production, and to the next mode of production again. And why this change in the mode of production? Because of the inherent contradictions and conflicts that are present in the society. Why this present? Why these contradictions and conflicts are present? Because of the conflict of interests. When the society gets polarized in forms of two classes, the interest gets polarized. Interest gets you can say arranged in a diametrically opposite format, and that's how, due to conflict of interests, the class struggle is now the reality. And that's how we are going to use the idea of historical materialism while explaining mode of production. Okay, let's start with this. What is the formula for historical materialism? Explanation. Change in the factors of production leads to change in relations of production, leads to change in mode of production. Okay, now we are going to use the idea here to define the mode of production. A simplistic understanding of mode of production is nothing but each stage in the progression of society, but technically, according to Marx, a mode of production is nothing but a peculiar, typical combination of respective factors and relations of production. As the society moves from one stage to another, the factors of production are of course getting changed and they are getting developed. Okay, for example, in each mode of production, in each stage or mode of production, the factors of production for that stage will be typical. And according to the factors of production, the relationships of production will also be different and typical, which are typical for that mode of production. For example, currently, let's say for example, we are in a capitalistic mode of production. The factors of production are nothing but technology, computer, AI, factory, machines and all. These are nothing but the factors of production. Those are not observed in earlier phases. They are typical to capitalism. At the same time, the relationships, that is the capitalist to have and have not, or capitalism to labor class or bourgeois to proletariat, what Marx talked about it, will go to that terms again in the next phase, of course. The relationship of production, that is the relationship between haves and have-nots, have not been seen before. It is unprecedented. At the same time, the factors of production are also new to the, or they are typical to capitalism. So in each mode of production, the relations and the factors of production will be typical in nature. They will be specialized to that mode of production only. Therefore, Marx defined the the mode of production as the combination. So what is a mode of production? Mode of production is nothing but a combination or combinational relationship, combination of FOP and ROP. Mode of production is a combination of the particular FOP and particular ROP. What do we mean by that? If I am talking about the feudalistic mode of production, I am talking about particular factors of production and relations of production which are peculiar, typical to that mode of production only. So technically defined, a mode of production is nothing but a combination of factors and the relations of the production which are present in that particular stage or mode of production. According to Marx, throughout the history, there have been 6 such different combinations, or in the past 3, presently 1 and 2 in future. Look at this now, how. So what is MOP? It is combination of FOP and ROP. According to Marx, throughout the history, society has evolved in a linear fashion. According to Marx, in a linear fashion. This is nothing but evolution of society. Let's say, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this will be the end, the 6, let's say. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This was the start of the society, right? According to Marx, there are total 6 stages which are going to be in the evolution of society. Currently, we are at this stage that is called as nothing but the capitalism. Technically, it is called as, in Marx's word, the capitalistic mode of production. Are you getting me? It is called as technically the capitalistic mode of production. Currently, we are here. Presently. Okay. In the past, there have been 3 different modes of production in the history, and after capitalism, there will be 2 more modes of production in the future. It is present, this is past, and this will be the future of the society. Okay, this will be the future of the society. These 2 stages, stage number 5 and 6, and 1, 2, and 3 are the past phases or the past of the society or the history of the society which has the material basis. And these 3 stages, earlier 3 stages, are called as, in Marx's words, as the first stage as primitive communism. Primitive communism. Okay, primitive communism. The second stage is called as ancient slave. Ancient slave society can be also another name, right? And the third stage is called as feudal mode of production. And that's how the first stage or the most earlier phase or the mode of production in the history of society, from where society started, is nothing but primitive communism. Then it moved to ancient mode of production, ancient slave society. Then it moved towards feudalism, likewise, right? 1 to 2, 2 to 3. And then now, after feudalism, we moved towards capitalism. And currently, we are in capital state. And after capitalism, the mode of production will change to one new mode of production that is called as socialistic mode of production. Socialistic mode of production, and after socialistic mode of production, we will again move towards modern communism. Modern communism or communistic mode of production. Write anything. Modern communistic mode of production, socialistic mode of production, capitalistic mode of production, feudalistic mode of production, ancient slave mode of production, primitive communism or primitive communistic mode of production. Are you getting me? And that's how, according to Marx, we started with communism. And we are going to end with communism also, or we are again going to stable, or you can say get satisfied. We will stabilize ourselves, we will stabilize the social structure into communism. only. Because man by nature is free, equal, and our quest for equality will end up into the last mode of production, that is called as the communism or the communistic mode of production. So by now, we have discussed about, of course, we are going to discuss each stage in details now. But before that, let's first of all revise or brush up the ideas. Historical materialism, in which we discussed about FOP, ROP, economic infrastructure, social superstructure. Economic infrastructure is combination of FOP and ROP. And that combination of FOP and ROP is nothing but one stage in the history. And that each stage in the history is called as mode of production. And according to Marx, the mode of production is nothing but the progression of society from one stage to another. A mode of production symbolizes each stage in that progress. And throughout the history, the society has been evolving throughout the stages of different modes of production, starting with communistic mode of production or starting with primitive communism. And what is the motor or energy or fuel or inspiration or motivation behind that evolution, behind that change? It is the contradictions. It is the conflicts. It is the conflicts of interests. It is the class struggle, right? It is the opposition of the interests. It is quest for a better life, equality. But to be more precise, the contradictions is the motor of the history and how the history progresses in that linear fashion. So what is the motor of the history? The motor of the history is nothing but the contradictions. Contradictions have inspired or fueled, propelled the society to move from primitive communism to ancient slave society. In ancient slave society, certain contradictions developed, and because of that contradictions or to solve those contradictions, society needed to be changed. And society changed from ancient to feudal mode of production. Again, over the period of time, in the feudal mode of production, the problems arise, right? Then the contradictions again took place, and to solve those contradictions, the society changed. Society changed to capitalism. And in capitalism, the problems are now we are experiencing, that is inequality, poverty, labor class exploitation, poor wages, higher working hours. This will lead to the class struggle according to Marx, and now after the class struggle, the capitalism will crumble down and will move towards socialism and then eventually towards modern communism. And currently you can experience that. Have you heard about Thomas Piketty? Or have you heard about We Are 99% movement? Or have you heard about Occupy Wall Street Journal, Wall Street movement? Occupy Wall Street movement? Or have you heard about the Oxfam report regarding India? In India itself, which is not a completely capitalist society, in 2018, the total wealth that India generated, out of the total wealth, the top 1% of the people accumulated 73% of that wealth. And that is the symbol of huge income inequalities even in Indian society. So can you think about the level and the quantum of income inequalities in the Western societies? Currently, in capitalism, we are experiencing contradictions. On one hand, few poor are getting more and more poor, right? And few, you can say, not few poor, but the majority of the population, they are getting exploited. They are living in a bad human development indices. Their education level, their health indices, their income levels are far below the average. They are experiencing hunger. They are experiencing poor civic amenities, right? At the same time, they are experiencing low levels of human rights and many other rights. But at the same time, there is a small chunk of people, a group, which experiences all the lively pleasures, all the power they are experiencing. They are accumulating wealth and power in huge quantums. Especially in COVID period, last year we experienced that the majority of the people were experiencing huge economic crisis at individual level, family level, but few were purchasing iPhones and the premium cars. Even the sale of the iPhone rose by 33% in the last year when the COVID was at its peak. I'm forgetting that the brand of that car, that is one of the premier cars, its sale also was at its peak. Phenomenal sale was going on, unprecedented sale, right? So why this is happening? Even after the economic slowdown and all, that is a contradiction. And that contradiction will give rise to the class conflict according to Karl Marx. And the class conflict will be the engine of the history, that will act as an engine of the history, and that will lead to the change in the society again to the new phase. Now let's discuss about technicalities of each mode of production. We will start. I hope you are thorough with the idea now, right? So what is mode of production? You are thorough with it. It is a combination of FOP and ROP. It is peculiar to that particular. It is a combination of factors of production, relations of production, which is particular to that stage of society. What do you mean by that? A combination of FOP and ROP in feudalism will be different from the combination of FOP and ROP in capitalism. And the combination of FOP and ROP in capitalism will be different from the combination of FOP and ROP in socialism. And likewise, because of that combination is changing, that is leading to change. Because at the foundation of the society, what is there? There is FOP and ROP. And once the FOP and ROP gets changed, it is leading to nothing but change in the stage of the history, that is the MOP. Now let's discuss about the first MOP, that is the primitive communism. According to Marx, the society in its earlier stage of the development was in primitive communism or the primitive communistic mode of production. In primitive communism or the primitive communistic mode of production, as the name suggests, why it is primitive, by the way, it was the earliest of the phase. So just we'll leave this word now. We'll talk about communism now. Communism means the communal ownership of all the factors of production, the production, all the processes, techniques and everything. There will be de facto equality. Of course, the complete equality won't be there because of the power relations and everything. But of course, we can suggest that there is equality in terms of ownership, in terms of social structures, economic structures, political structures, all the factors of production, all the techniques of production, all the production will be communally owned. And these societies are featured by the features like hunting-gathering society. Okay, and the most peculiar feature will be equality, communal ownership. Right? no exploitation. At the same time, the tools with which the society produces, that which are called as the factors of production, the tools will be on its very basic format, very primitive format. They will either produce with the, you can say, rocks or sticks, because this is where the hunting gathering societies, they used to hunt the animals. And for hunting, they used to make use of arrows, bow, or you can say bows, and or the axes, and all these tools which are used for the hunting and gathering are of the very, very basic nature. And that's how I can write one more feature as the primitive or the basic FOP, the basic and the primitive factors of production. And the relations of production are equal and not exploitative, because everyone was getting involved in the production process, which is hunting gathering. Production process is common for all the societies and all the modes of production, but the form will change. The form of the production process in the first phase of society was hunting and gathering, and in hunting and gathering everybody used to get involved from in the one form or another, and that's how the relations of production were equal, communal, right? But over the period of time, the relation with the maturity in the primitive communism, by the way, what happens? Each and every mode of production gets starting a maturity, its peak, right? What do I mean by that? We can explain with a graph. Let's say, for example, the primitive communism graph, if it gets started from here, it will start it maturing, and at this point, its yield point will arrive where it has to end. And that yield point of, let's say, the highest or the peak of the maturity of that primitive communism, at that peak, the factors and relations of production will be changing. As of now, you can imagine, as the factors of production are the most basic in format, they will get changed, right? They will use few more techniques, more advanced tools, more advanced skills, more advanced knowledge for production now. That is natural process, because with the period of time, the factors of production will have to change, and therefore, with the change in what will happen with the change, advancement in the factors of production, this process will start. With the advancements of the factors of production, there will be development of the new relations of production. And as this is nothing but the change in the factors of production, and this is nothing but change in ROP, you can imagine what will be the next stage in the formula. It will be the change in MOP. And that's how in the primitive communism, as the factors of production will getting advanced, technologically developed, it will lead to change in the relations of production, and somehow the relations of production will move from equality to somewhat inequality, where the power and the factors of production will start getting accumulated by few. The few will start controlling the material conditions in that society, and that's how the society will start moving towards the new mode of production. That is nothing but a change in the mode of production, and naturally the new mode of production will take its place or birth, and the new mode of production will replace the earlier mode of production. Why? Because of change in FOP, which leads to change in ROP, which changes the economic infrastructure of society, and this is nothing but change in the mode of production. And the next mode of production that will replace the primitive communism is called as the ancient slave mode of production. In ancient slave mode of production, the relations or the factors of production are somewhat advanced than the earlier phase, that is called as which is called as, yes, of course, right, primitive communism. And the relations of production will be somehow exploitative, some more exploitative than the earlier mode of production, and that's how it is leading to nothing but change in the mode of production to the current state, that is the ancient slave. Here, the factors of production somewhat advanced, advanced than the earlier, that is called as primitive communism. The relationships of production will be somewhat exploitative and not egalitarian, and the relationship will be, you can say, symbolized by the classes, two classes, that is called as nothing but the masters and the slaves. Few human beings will be termed and treated as slaves. They will work for their masters. They will work without pay. They will work for the masters without a proper, you can say, treatment, without wages, without proper working conditions. And that relationship which is getting developed is called as a relationship of production, which is symbolized by a master-slave relationship. Okay, in this relationship, yes, of course, the FOPs are somewhat advanced than primitive communism, but exploitation is getting started. Masters are now owning few things in the society. Masters are now controlling certain things in society. Masters are now owning certain material conditions. Right? And with the advancement and after reaching the peak in the ancient slave mode of production, the factors of production will be developing more and more. And you can imagine in the history of humankind, if you have read about or read the book called as Sapiens, you will know after that we domesticated or we stabilized for the agricultural work, right? The human race started owning the lands. Few owned the lands, few cultivated the lands, few worked on the lands, right? And that's how the ancient slave mode of production started maturing, and at the yield point signifies the peak or the advancement in the factors of production and change in the relationships of production that gave rise to the next stage in the history of the society, that is called as the feudal mode of production. Feudal. The feudal mode of production, where the land is at the center of the society. Those who will own the land, they will have more power and say. And the owners of the land are called as the feuds. And those who don't own the land and who used to work on land are called as the serfs. Feuds and serfs. As the production process was getting matured, with the more advanced factors of production, we started cultivating the lands. We started the agricultural practice. We used different tools for agriculture. We completely changed the production process, by the way. We earlier used to have hunting and gathering. Now we are cultivating on the land, a piece of land. We were getting domesticated, or we started stabilizing on a particular geographical location. And that was nothing but advancement in the factors of production. At the same time, the relations of production change, and that relations of the production are now called as the relation between the feuds and the serfs, or the feudal lords and the serfs. The serfs were the landless laborers. And the feuds were the land owning community, or the land owners. I will write it here. The land owners. We are talking about feudal mode of production in which land was at the centrality. Those who controlled or owned the land are called as the feuds, and those who tilled, cultivated the lands and who were the landless laborers, they are called as the serfs. The factors of production here are now somewhat advanced than the earlier two stages, and the relations of production are more exploitative than earlier two stages. Relations of production are in the form of ownership of the land and non-ownership of the land. Those who did not own the land, they cultivated the lands, and those who owned the lands, they managed the production process of agriculture. And that's how you can observe that there are inherent contradictions in this phase. There is inherent conflict of interest in the phase. And as there are going to be inherent contradictions and conflicts in that phase, this is very natural that the society will transform itself from the one stage of mode of production to another. As we have already discussed, what is a transformation in the stages? It is the mode of production. And naturally, you can observe here, as the relations of production between the feuds and the serfs are getting more and more exploitative, it is leading to certain inherent contradictions. The contradictions because of the new factors of production and the exploitative relations of production. Right? At the peak of the feudalistic mode of production, where it will start yielding, the factors of production will be so advanced, technology will get advanced, and now the production process is getting shifted slowly towards industries, factories and all. And that's how it will give a space for the new mode of production. The feudalism will crumble down, the land will lose its significance, those who are involved in the agriculture will lose significance. Both the owners of the land and the cultivators in the land, they will start losing their importance, their power and everything as the society progresses, right? And you can imagine how the society might have progressed from agricultural society towards industrial society. Now the new urban centers will get, you can say, accumulated. New industries will start establishing. The laborers will start migrating towards industry and urban areas, and that's how a new mode of production will start getting its place, and the new mode of production will replace the feudal mode of production. And that new mode of production will be termed as the capitalist mode of production, or the capitalism. capitalistic. In capitalism, the factors of production are of course changed, but the factors of production are now most advanced. The factory based system, the factory based production, where the huge machineries will be deployed, which will be based on the scientific mechanisms, the laws of physics, chemistry, algebra, mathematics. All these, the most advanced knowledge will be used for developing the most advanced of those technologies and machines in the factory system. And that's how the factors of production, that is FOP, will be at its most advanced stage. Then what about ROP? Now, those who were earlier involved in the agriculture as laborers, landless laborers, they will gradually start moving towards urban and industrial areas, and they will be employed as, or they will be deployed as the labor in the factory. The same serf group, serfs, the serfs will now be converted into what? The labor. And the earlier, you can say the masters or the feuds who own the land will now start owning the capital. And in capitalism, the centrality will be nothing but the capital. Capital will be at the center. Capital will be at the center of the society. Those who will own the capital will have the real power. Earlier in feudalism, those who used to own lands had the real power. Now in capitalism, those who will own capital will have the real power. And those who own or have capital will be called as the haves. Those who have capital are called as the haves, and those who don't own the capital or don't have the capital are called as the have-nots. If you can draw the social structure in the capitalism, it will be somewhat in a pyramidal format. There will be very few people at the top, those who will own the capital. There will be very few people at the top of the social structure, those who will own this, you can say, the capital, what Marx called the haves as, or this community as the bourgeois class. The bourgeois class. And the rest of the population who don't own the land or own the capital, which are called as the have-nots, what Marx termed as them as proletariat. Proletariat class, bourgeois class. Are you getting me? Earlier, those were in the feudalism, the earlier social structure was like this. Bourgeois that there were used to be the feuds and serfs, masters and slaves, right? Masters and slaves, feuds and serfs, bourgeois and proletariat. But one difference is that the factors of production are at their most advanced stage, and just like the factors of production, the relations of production will reach the peak of the exploitation, most exploitative. and the factors of production most advanced. As the factors of production are most advanced and relations of production are most exploitative and most alienative, where the antagonism will be at its peak, in that situation, it gives rise to one particular, you can say, event that is called as the class conflict. According to Marx, can you observe this? Because what are the interests of this class, proletariat class? The interest of this proletariat class is high wages, low working hours, better life situations, holidays, right? But what are the interest of the bourgeois class? The interest of the bourgeois class will be nothing but maximum profit, maximum production, lowest wages for the workers to be paid, high working hours, almost no holiday. The production process must go on. And that exactly situation is the situation of capitalism, where the conflict of interest will be at its peak. Okay, so can I write it here? Just a second. Can I write it here as the conflict of interests will be at its peak right? The alienation will be at its peak. Antagonism will be at its peak. Exploitation will be at its peak. And this is nothing but the contradiction. The conflict of interest is nothing but a symbol of contradiction. And that's how it is nothing but contradiction. And whenever the contradictions or the contradiction takes place, it starts the motor of the history automatically. And what is the motor of the history? It starts the motor of history. And what is the motor of history, by the way? Contradiction. And once the motor of history gets started again, it is leading to nothing but change in the modes of production or change in mode of production. And that's how the capitalism will be replaced by the next mode of production. But the contradictions here give rise to nothing but the conflict. It gives rise to nothing but the class conflict. Again, one technical term that we are going to learn in its entirety in the next sessions, as it is a separate syllabus in Karl Marx. But to give an introductory idea about class conflict, according to Marx, in capitalism, there will be two classes, the haves and have-nots, bourgeois and proletariat. And at the maturity of capitalism, the two classes will be polarized in its complete sense. And the labor class will start gaining the consciousness of their exploitation. They will start getting aware of their exploitation. And the labor class will now start joining their hands. They will get starting uniting. They will start uniting, right? And that's how it will lead to nothing but class conflict. And what is class conflict? It is nothing but the struggle for equality, struggle against exploitation, struggle against alienation. And this will lead to overthrowing of capitalism. And the class struggle or contradiction in terms of word is the motor of the history. class struggle, particularly for capitalism, will give rise to or pave the way for or make the space for a next mode of production. That mode of production is called as socialism or socialistic mode of production. I hope you are okay till now. Simple, right? What is a mode of production? A stage in the history. And what is a stage of in the history? A stage, it is a peculiar combination of FOP and ROP. And once the FOP and ROP both changes, it leads to change in that stages, and that's how the society moves from one stage to another. That is a change in the mode of production. In primitive communism, there used to be equality in relations of production, and the FOP, that is factors of production, used to be very basic format. And now the factors of production as a natural process start changing, and that's how ROP also change, and that's how the MOP change. It changes to ancient slave, again it changes to feudalism, again it changes to capitalism. And it's in each stage, FOP changes and likewise ROP changes. And when the both FOP and ROP changes, MOP changes. And now currently we are in capitalism, where we are experiencing the factors of production in its most advanced format and relations of production in its most exploitative format. If you are reading the newspapers, you might have gone across a number of news in India also. What happened in Noida, Gurgaon or Chennai, where you can just recall that event in Maruti Suzuki plant, where the laborer, they almost revolted against the exploitation in the capitalist or the Maruti Suzuki plant. That was nothing but symbolizing or a symbol of the inherent contradictions present in that plant, which represents capitalism. Because the maximum number of population or the laborers are working there, they are producing for the sake of their owners, and owners are very few in numbers. They earn huge profits. They live a very well-off life. They have everything in their hands. But on the other hand, who are the real producers? The labor class in capitalism. Who are the hard workers who work for long hours in the factories? The workers. Who receive the lowest of the wages or lowest of the rewards? The workers. Who are rejected from a single penny of the profits? The workers. Are you getting me? And that's how they will rise against the inherent contradictions, because in capitalism or in any mode of production, the contradictions are inherent. According to Marx, in any mode of production, the contradictions are inherent, and that is how the contradiction becomes the motor of the history that gives rise to conflicts, that gives rise to antagonism, and that changes the complete mode of production to another format. Like in capitalism, we are experiencing now in the form of Arab Spring, in the form of Occupy Wall Street movement, in the form of We Are 99% movement. What is happening throughout the world, you can observe that. We are at the peak of capitalism, especially after 2008 economic slowdown. We are at the peak of capitalism and globalization that is leading to nothing but exploitation of workers. We are feeling unsatisfied with our job profiles. Many of your friends will be working in the corporates now. The same cry, they will repeatedly talk with you about the unsatisfaction, dissatisfaction about their jobs. They are working just for the sake of the salary and packages. They are experiencing the alienation phase in their lives. They will work for long hours in their MNCs. They will sit for long hours in front of the screen, the computer screens. And in the end, they will come home tired. It will ruin their personal lives even. It will ruin their marriages. It will ruin their friendships. It will ruin their inner peace. It will ruin their mental health even. And that's how that particular worker, either who is working in the factory, a mechanical factory, or any IT sector MNC, the both are facing the same problem of alienation, exploitation. And according to Marx, the exploitation will reach at its peak and the workers will get united and they will again arrange for class conflict or a revolution. And through this class conflict, the society will change its form to the next change or next format that is called as socialism. Okay, so what will be the natural next phase? That is socialism. According to Marx, the earlier phase that is called as the capitalistic phase or capitalism will have inherent contradictions. The contradictions will result in class conflict, or to be more precise, a revolution. And the revolution or the class conflict will pave the way for nothing but a socialistic mode of production. So the natural process or the natural progress of capitalism through the change or through the revolution will lead to socialistic mode of production. A socialistic mode of production in socialistic mode of production, the labor class will now own everything. The labor class will start owning the factory, the produce, the material conditions, and that's how, according to Marx, the socialistic mode of production is nothing but, he used another term for it called as the dictatorship of proletariat. By the way, what is a revolution? A revolution where the working class will join their hands together, they will rise against the exploitation and they will just overthrow the capitalist mode of production, capitalism, or the capitalist class. The capitalist class will be overthrown by the labor class, and now the labor class will own the factory system, the labor class will own the industries, and that's how it is called as a dictatorship of proletariat. But according to Marx, the phase won't continue for entirety. The phase or this phase is just a transitory phase. Just a transitory phase. Just a transitory phase, right? It is just a transition. The final goal of the society is to reach to communism. As it started from communism, it will end to communism. This is just a transition where recently revolution has happened and all the factories and the production is now owned by or controlled by or dictated by the labor class. That is called as dictatorship of the proletariat, and where a transition will happen naturally towards, without any conflict, naturally towards the another stage. That stage is called as the modern communism. In modern communism, unlike the earlier socialism, at least there was a state, a labor class and everything. But now in modern communism, there won't be no class or there won't be any class, right? The labor class will give away their ownership of all the, you can say, factory and industries. They will give away their ownership. The ownership will be now communal ownership. Everybody will own everything. Communal ownership, right? The factors of production, of course, will be advanced, but the relations of production will be equality or egalitarian. No exploitation. There is no question of exploitation at all, right? Because now there is no class distinction. Everything is owned by the community on its own, right? There is no exploitation. Complete equality. This phase, according to Marx, will be the last phase and the last goal of this social evolution, and that is how it is called as modern communism. Are you getting me? The earlier stage, that the socialism or socialistic mode of production was just a transition from capitalism to communism. Just a small transition where the labor class will be dominant. Labor class will be the ruler. There will be the government, but dominated by the labor class also. But in this stage, the last stage, there will be no class, no state, nothing. No class, no state, no labor class, no capitalist class, no government, nothing. Everything will be owned by the community itself. The relations will be equal and not exploitative. That phase, which Marx called as communism or communistic mode of production. Right? Isn't it a bold idea? Of course, anybody who was listening to Marx live will rise at that point, at that place, and go for revolution. It was very revolutionary idea, by the way, the communism, where no pain, no hurt, no suffering will be there. All will be equal. Everybody will be equal. Everything will be communally owned. Right? And that's how the idea of mode of production combined with historical materialism gives the idea or inspiration for the you can say overthrow of the capitalism. This is very significant, by the way. The mode of production as a concept, the mode of production as an idea given by Marx is very significant in the context that it is the theoretical explanation, a systematic explanation of the social evolution. What is the significance of the idea of mode of production? By the way, just to revise with, how many stages of the development are there? There are 6 stages, starting with primitive communism. The society moved towards ancient slave society, to feudal, to capitalist, to socialistic mode of production, and lastly we will end up into communism, that is the modern communism. In each stage, the factors of production are different and therefore relations of production are different. Okay? And what is the motor of this history? The motor of the history is nothing but contradiction. What is the fuel and propulsion? It is the contradictions. Contradictions in the interests. Right? This is the theory of mode of production, the idea of mode of production. And why it is significant? It is significant because the mode of production as an idea or the concept explained the evolution of society in its scientific format. At the same time, Marx tried to explain each stage very systematically and scientifically. Systematic. He tried to prove that how society might have evolved. He tried to prove that the society is founded on economic and material conditions. And it will continue to be on that conditions until we reach the last stage, that is called as communism. Right? But there are many sociological thinkers who don't like the idea of mode of production, who criticize the idea of mode of production. They allege Marx on various lines. The first such allegation on Marx regarding mode of production is being utopian. Like a daydream, right? The first, you can say, critic to mode of production, the idea of mode of production being, the first is being utopian. What do you mean by this? Utsahi, utopian, or this is not going to happen. As you can observe, many countries earlier have tried to establish their social organization on Marxist lines. Many countries in Latin America, Russia, China, even India, they tried to divert themselves from the capitalistic mode of production and they sought the way for the socialism or communism. But in not in a single society, the communism has been established in its complete format. Even the earlier communistic countries including Cuba, Russia, China, Latin American countries are now organizing themselves on the capitalistic lines. Russia, China, or take example of the BRI project of China, Belt and Road Initiative, or CPEC project, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or China's string of pearls policy and its expansion in the South China Sea. You can observe that those countries who started to organize themselves on the Marxist lines or Marxism, that is, the vision for communism, the communism has not been established in any country in its complete form. Rather, these countries are moving back towards capitalism again. Are you getting me? They are moving back towards capitalism. That means the allegation on Marx being utopian or being utopian in sense of MOP stands valid. Right? That's how, yes, it can be said that the Marxist idea on MOP or communism is being utopian. At the same time, the Marxist idea on MOP is also accused of being economically deterministic or economic reductionism. Everything he links to is to capitalism or economic foundation or the material foundation. Beyond that, he can't see anything. Right? So on those lines, we can criticize, we can accuse the idea of means of or the mode of production being incomplete in sense. And once we finish the another two topics, that is called as alienation and class struggle, we are going to have a complete critique on Marx. We will analyze Marx's ideas in a very critical way, to what extent they are successful and not, and all those ideas as a critic can be applied to all the theories, including alienation and MOP and historical materialism also. But despite these critics or the allegations, the idea of MOP and historical materialism are too revolutionary, too inspiring, too motivating. They are call for action. These ideas do not establish status quo. They are call for action. They are call for social change. They are call for rise. They are call for awareness. They are call for class consciousness. They are call for class conflict. They are call for equality. And that's how we can't undermine, we can't underestimate the potential of these two concepts, historical materialism and mode of production. And on those lines and these notes, I would like to conclude this session here. This session was regarding the idea of mode of production given by Karl Marx. Until now, we have finished two ideas of Karl Marx. The first was regarding historical materialism, and second that we have recently finished, that is regarding mode of production. And now we are going to enter into the next phase of alienation or alienation concept, and lastly in the class struggle. Okay, till then I would like to thank you very much for your patience. I hope you are technically and conceptually thorough with these ideas. Please revise it again and again, and please keep your syllabus copies with you all the time. Thank you very much. We will meet soon.
Jnandeep Academy, India's top coaching institution for civil services preparation. Join us online to get most enriching experience from best faculty with excellent notes and specially designed courses. To join the batch, download Jnandeep Academy app from Google Play Store. For more information, contact 9511 280 465.